Okay, welcome to another Orbiter 2010 video, and this video is going to be a follow-up to my follow-up that I did with this Moon to ISS video. This is just one of those things that's pretty interesting to me, and I think it's quite useful. And I noticed something else after playing around a little bit more after recording the last follow-up video, and it's definitely worth showing. So let's get underway. Again, I'm going to bring up Orbit MFD, and I'm going to reference Earth. And we're going to warp time forward until Earth is the dominating gravitational influence.
Rotation.
Kill rotate. So let's go faster. Let's get over there to that point where we're down to 0.50. Kill rotate again. And let's go to 10,000. Kill rotate again. I guess the first thing I want to mention is that once we come out of stage 1, so in other words the Moon, if we reference the Moon, we can see here that its gravitational influence is now 0.03, so TransX is updated. I always thought originally that that was like the best time to do the mid-course correction, but I can now see that there are definitely cases where you don't necessarily need to do the mid-course correction that soon, and this turns out to be one of those cases. So let's go forward further, and actually what we're looking for more so than when we get into Earth's gravitational influence, where that's dominating. I want to reference Earth, and this time make sure I target the ISS. We're wanting to get over to the descending node, and again let me just point out that we're going to get to periapsis in 297,000 seconds, and we're going to get to the descending node in 215,000 seconds. So we're going to get there plenty sooner than we're going to get to periapsis. We have, 80,000 seconds, I believe, is the difference. So let's get over to that point. And there's at least 2 or 3 things I want to show here. Okay, Earth is now the dominating gravitational influence, and we're getting pretty close. Let's not overshoot, so let's back off to 100. And let's go with that for now. So we're 646 seconds away from the descending node, roughly 10 minutes. And if we bring up Orbit MFD, we can see we're 112,000 seconds away from periapsis. Earth's gravity is 0.54. If we want, we can see how much time that is. 112,600 divided by 60 seconds divided by 60 minutes. So we're 31 hours away from periapsis, so over a day away from periapsis. And if we look at TransX, not that this is terribly important, but we can also tell that we are coming up to a node, because we can see that that white line is now, it's completely laid over top of that green line, so we know we're in position. So TransX agrees with the line plane MFD. Now here's the first thing I want to show. If we bring up our calculator and we calculate our plane change, something I noticed, so we put in 15.85 divided by 2, press the send button, multiply that by 2, and then multiply that by our orbital velocity, which let's go with 1200, because by the time 500 seconds passes, this is going to speed up a little bit. So we'll put in 1200, and that says our plane change is going to be 330.9, so maybe 331 delta V. But if we turn maneuver mode on in TransX, and we go through the variables, go to change plane, and something I still don't completely understand, but we have to put in negative plane change, even though we're coming up to the descending node, and I don't completely understand that, but that's just the way it is. So we're going to add in negative plane change until we see what we just saw right there. You may have missed it because it's very quick. So actually, let me reset, and let's go to find, and let's go through this slower. I'm putting in plane change, and what you'll notice will happen when you get to the point where you're in plane, you'll see this white line suddenly shift, and you have to be really looking out for it, or else you'll miss it. It's right there, and so we need to go to a finer setting because it's too aggressive at that point. So let's add in some of the plane change that we took away, and you can see that white line just jumps. So let's go to an even finer setting, and there we have it. So when it does that spin, that's how you know you are in plane. And what you want is you want this to be 90 degrees to your green line. And why 90 degrees? Well, if you think about it, every time you get in plane with anything, your positional indicator in aligned plane MFD is always 90 degrees to your, I think it's actually called the line of nodes. So instead of calling it the white line, maybe I should call it the line of nodes. So that's why we want it to be 90 degrees. Now here's what's interesting. According to our calculation, we need 331 worth of delta V, but according to TransX, we only need 93, and I believe this is actually correct. So I'm not sure why the calculation is failing at this point. Maybe it's because our orbit is not circular. Maybe that calculation only works in a circular orbit, I don't know. But whatever the case, you know, TransX tells us that this plane change is only going to be 93. And I honestly don't know which one's right, but I think TransX is correct. So, if we go to rotation, and we want to be in the orbit plus position, and we can even use the autopilot, because we're now at the point where Earth's gravity is the dominating influence. And you'll see that TransX maneuver mode agrees with the orbit plus position. And that part still confuses me a little bit, because since we're orbit plus, you would think that TransX would be saying that our orbit velocity would be plus 93, but it says we're negative 93. I still don't really understand that part. But it is what it is. So now let's turn that off. And I can also see, according to TransX, that if we do that negative 93, it's going to raise our orbit, and we definitely don't want that. So let's add in some outward to bring it down. And let's go down pretty far, because we also know that as we get closer to the Earth, our altitude's actually going to increase a little bit. So if we add in a little bit of negative outward, then we can take care of our PEA at the same time. Now what I want to do, since I don't really know exactly when this burn's going to take place as far as the date goes, I'm going to just keep an eye on the time to node in aligned plane, and in TransX I'm just going to keep resetting the date until it's pretty close to the time to do the burn. And you can see the white line's now out of position, so I need to kind of come back here and just add in a little more plane change. Either add it in or take it away. Looks like in this case I need to take it away, so I'm putting in a little bit of plus, and I'm just waiting for that white line to spin. Okay, so maybe it is negative. And I think I just saw it jump actually. So let me go hyper. And maybe not, let's put in some more negative just to see. Well, whatever the case, that part's not terribly important. We know roughly what it has to be. So really what we want TransX for is just mainly to get ourselves lined up.
Translation, rotation.
So roughly in this position, we will be able to bring our relative inclination down to 0. And we'll be able to bring our periapsis down. Since I've still got 2 minutes, I'm going to reset the date again. And I'm going to do another update. And I'm going to see if I can refine that plane change just a little bit. Actually, it might need quite a bit more negative since I added all that outward. Or maybe the other way around, I might not need as much plane change since I added the outward. Oh, there we go. I just saw it flip around. So now I'll go ultra and go back the other way until it starts to move. And there it is. Now hyper. And there we are. We're back to that point where it's 90 degrees to the line. That's kind of hard to find that position where it flips around, because if you have your change plane set on fine or medium or even super, that flip happens so fast. It's just hard to see it. Okay, so there we are. Let's reset the date again, because we haven't done the burn yet, but we're getting close. And we'll do one final correction here on hyper. And we'll just leave it at that. And now we'll get lined up.
Translation.
And now I'm not really concerned about what TransX says my delta V needs to be. The only thing I want to do is get the vessel lined up. And then do the burn until the relative inclination is 0.00.
Translation.
Okay. There we are at 0.00. Notice our line of nodes is now at a 90-degree angle to our position, but it's going to change. And I've actually figured out why that's happening, at least I think. Take another sip of water. Should have refilled my water cup before I started this. So we're done with maneuver. Off. Now I just want to check my PEA. It's down to 27, so I overdid it a little bit on bringing the altitude down. I do know it's going to continue to go up as I get closer to the Earth, but it's not going to go up by the amount that I want. So before I get any farther away from the position that I'm currently at, let me just go prograde real quick. And I'm going to show also what we can do about this and explain my theory as to why it's moving.
Rotation.
Okay, we're at the prograde position. Turn translation on. And I'm just doing a little bit of outward to push the PEA up to like maybe 60. Because I think that... Actually, we'll go with that. Because I think by the time I get over to the Earth, that will have climbed another 14 or so kilometers. Okay, now why aren't we staying in plane? As I move forward, and let me just go 10x to kind of show. As I move forward, you'll notice that this positional indicator is, instead of staying, you know, at a perfect 0.00, which it would normally do in low Earth orbit, notice it keeps pulling over this way, and the TTHA is kind of climbing. Let's go to 100. See, that's climbing. And now our relative inclination has climbed to 0.01.
Rotation.
But if we go to this position,
Translation.
and if we translate, I guess it would be, yeah, up using 2, it actually pushes our vessel kind of to the other side of the node. And let's go to 0.05. And you would normally never want to do that in low Earth orbit because it would throw you farther and farther off plane the farther out you go. But here's the thing, as I go forward now, let's go to 100. Let's go to 1,000. Notice that the relative inclination is continuing to go down. And then it's going to get to this position. It's going to flatten out here. It's going to go to that 90-degree angle, like it just did. And now we're back to the other side, and we're hugging the descending node line. And now it's going to go 0.01 and continue climbing. Why is it happening? Here's what I think. I think it's the inaccuracies of the MFDs. I think as we're going between the Earth and the Moon, the gravitational permutations and the inaccuracies are causing it to basically be pulled in toward the descending node. So if we want to arrive at Earth and have a 0.00 relative inclination,
Translation.
what we can do is we can compensate for that inaccuracy by put in maybe as much as that much, 0.15 in favor of the ascending node, and then I go forward out to 1,000. Notice that's going to get closer and closer to 0.00, and I'm getting closer to the Earth. And so I just kind of need to keep doing that. And those are very small corrections. And that's just a touch of translation. So it's like no delta V. And again, it's really unfortunate that you can't set things where you want them to be and have them hold, but these MFDs just aren't that accurate. So now we're coming all the way around, we're going to get to that 90-degree position. We're at 0.00. It's going to flip over to the descending node. And if we keep going forward without doing another correction, then by the time we get to Earth, we're not going to be in plane with the ISS.
Rotation.
So I can do this again.
Translation.
I can translate, I guess it would be up. And I'll go back out to 0.15. Seems like a good number. And then I'll time warp out until it drops to 0.00. Keeping an eye on my gravitational indicator so I know how close I am. Keeping an eye on my PEA to make sure that it's climbing and it's going to be about where I want it. By the time I get to Earth, I might actually need to bump it out a little bit because it's not climbing fast enough. So we're getting back closer to 0.00. Getting really close to Earth now. So you do reach a point where you don't want to correct, too much at a time. If I do another correction, I'm not going to go all the way to 0.15 because I'm getting too close at this point. I would just do 1/10 of a degree or so at a time. PA is actually dropping now.
Rotation. Translation.
So before I get too close in, I'm going to translate out. Because the closer I get to Earth, the more expensive it becomes to do that little bit of translation. So let's continue forward. And it looks like I overdid it at the very last time. Instead of going all the way to 0.15, the last time I should have went to like 0.10. But you get the idea. And I might even be able to
Rotation.
get that last little bit.
Translation.
And it doesn't look like I'll be able to get it. So, but that you can see, we're all the way back to Earth, and we're almost all the way to 0.00. But let's go ahead and close the distance all the way down, see exactly where we end up. And we're going to reach the node before periapsis, so we'll be able to fix that last 0.02.
Rotation.
Okay, as soon as we get to basically 1 second, we're just going to need a little bit of translation to get that all the way to 0.00. Okay, let's come on a time warp.
Translation.
Oops.
Rotation. Translation.
And 0.01, 0.00, and there we have it. We made it from the moon all the way back to the Earth, and we're in plane with the ISS with a relative inclination of 0.00. And we're here at 700 kilometers, so we are ready to hit the atmosphere and do all of our braking maneuver. Now it may seem a bit cumbersome to have to do all that, but barring some vastly improved MFD that can take everything into account, then I don't know another way to do it. You just have to kind of do those small translations to keep yourself right there at 0.00 all the way back to Earth. And obviously I'm not going to do the whole atmospheric thing all over again. I just wanted to do that follow-up to the follow-up to kind of plug in the last little bit of information that I kind of felt was missing. And again, I'm going to redo this whole flight from start to finish so that I can have at least one video showing everything, you know, from the beginning to the end, hopefully without making any mistakes. Of course, some mistake or another always works its way into these kinds of videos. It may be a little while before I get around to that, because my throat just really is not cooperating lately, and I'm sure you can tell in this video that I'm having a little bit of trouble speaking, so we will get to that when we get to it. It's going to be it for this video. If you liked the follow-up, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and hopefully you understand how all that works. So give it a try. It's a fun flight, you know, taking off the moon, taking off from the moon and getting all the way back to Earth and arrive in plane with the ISS, or, you know, put another vessel in orbit around the Earth on a different inclination in a different longitude of the ascending node and try to capture it. Rendezvous with another XR2 or whatever. It's pretty fun and it's quite useful. One thing I forgot to mention was that sometimes you might come back to Earth with a vessel that can't get into the atmosphere. You know, like the Shuttle A. When you come back with the Shuttle A, it's not built for atmospheric flight, so you have to come back to Earth and be in orbit. And it makes perfect sense to come back to Earth with the Shuttle A and target the ISS. So that's just something to think about. Anyway, that's the end of this video. I will see you next time.